What is going on, guys? Welcome to this Python tutorial for finance. In today's video, we're going to visualize stock data using Python with so-called candlestick charts. Candlestick charts are just a very efficient way to, or a very good way to visualize stock data, because each individual candlestick in this chart here represents or visualizes four values at the same time. So this is the candlestick chart for the Apple share price. And as you can see, each day has a certain candlestick that is either red or green, and it represents four values. These four values are the open, the high, the low, and the close. So the open value is basically the value which the share or the stock has when the market's open. And of course, the close value is the price that the stock has when the market's closed. And in between that time of the opening and the closing of the market, this stock can go up and can go down. And when it reaches its maximum point of the day, this is the high value. And the lowest point, the minimum point of the day, is the low value. So we can say our market, or the market's open and our stock starts at $100 US. Then over the course of the day, it goes down to $80. Then it goes up to $160, and then it closes at $140, for example. This would be this candlestick, or this movement could be represented by this candlestick, for example, which would be a green one because the markets open at a certain price and close at a higher price. This is a positive movement, an upward movement, which means we have a green candlestick. In case we have a red candlestick, or in case the markets open at a certain price and close at a lower price, we have a downward movement, which means that we have to plot a red candlestick because the stock went down. And by using these candlesticks, we end up with a chart like this over the course of multiple days, weeks, months, or years. And we can visualize the stock data, and each single day or each individual day has a candlestick that shows the volatility of this day, of the stock this day, at the particular day. We can see the maximum value, the lowest value, the open and the close, and these charts are just used most of the time when visualizing stock data. So let's start with the coding. First of all, we'll need a couple of libraries that we need to import. Maybe you have some of them already installed, but if not, just open your command line and install the packages using pip. So if you have ordinary Python, you can just type in pip install and the package names, or if you have a certain Anaconda environment, you can activate it first, activate, in my case, neural 9, and then you can use the pip in here to install the packages. And the packages we're going to need are, first of all, pandas, which we will need for dealing with data frames and stuff. Also, we're going to need pandas data reader, because this is the library that we're going to use to download our data from the web, from the API. We're also going to need matplotlib, since we're going to visualize the data and we're going to show plots and stuff. But in particular, we're going to need MPL finance as well, because this is the library that allows us to actually plot the candlestick charts, because matplotlib itself does not have a function that offers plotting a candlestick chart. And I think that's it. What you could also install is maybe NumPy if it does not get installed automatically, because pandas actually and also matplotlib build on NumPy, but maybe you won't need it. So the most important modules are pandas, pandas data reader, MPL finance, and matplotlib. I think that's it. And we can start with the coding. So you open a new file, and let's call this candlestick chart. And the first thing that we need to do is, of course, import the libraries that we're going to use. In our case, we're going to need datetime. This is a module or a library of core Python, and we're going to give it the alias of dt. Then import pandas data reader as web. Also, we're going to need matplotlib.pyplot, the basic module for plotting as PLT, and we're going to need matplotlib.dates because we're going to need to convert our dates into a specific format later on. And last but not least, we're going to need MPL finance, or we're going to need the method candlestick.ohlc, which means open, high, low, close. Notice that we have another type of candlestick chart here, OCHL, which is open, close, high, low. It's the difference is just the order of the values, so we're going to use open, high, low, close, which will be important because we're going to restructure the data frame later on, and we need to put our data in this specific order to plot it. So first of all, let's start with defining our time frame. We need to define two dates in between which we want to plot or look at the data. We plot the data in this time frame. So let's write a comment here, define time frame. And we'll need a start date and an end date. So the start date we define by using the datetime function of the datetime module, so dt.datetime. And in here, we can just put in 3 parameters. We start by the year, or we start with the year, the month, and the day. So in this case, we would start with the 1st of January 2019. You can actually pick whatever date you want. You can also go back to 2015 or 2001 or 2, whatever you want. But this might be a problem if you pick a company that has not existed back then. For example, you could go with Facebook and you can enter 2002, but Facebook did not exist 2002, so you get an error message. But I'm going to go with 2019 because I want a quite short time frame so that I can look at the data in more detail. Then let's define the end date. You can also define a custom end date here. For example, maybe you just want to look up until February or March, but I usually go with the now function here, which means that the end point or the end date is the moment right now, which in this case is the 21st of August. And you can go with whatever time frame you want, but I'm going to pick this one. So the 1st of January 2019 up until now. So in the second step, we're going to load our data. And to do this, we're going to need the pandas data reader module. So let's define our new data frame. You can call it data, you can call it df, whatever you want. And we're going to need the data reader of the pandas data reader module. So we write web.datareader. Now here we need to pass 4 parameters. And the first parameter is the ticker symbol of the stock we're interested in. And we can pick whatever stock we want. For example, we could go with Apple, but we don't need to pass, or we can't just pass the name Apple or Facebook, but we need to pass the ticker symbol of this particular company. And in order to know the ticker symbol, you can just use Google, or you can use the Yahoo Finance API. So you go to finance.yahoo.com, and then you can just write the name of your company, for example, Facebook, and you can see the symbol of Facebook is FB. Or you can go with Apple, and you can see AAPL, or Amazon, and you can see AMZN. Whatever you want, you just put in the name of the company and you look for a stock symbol. Alternatively, of course, you can also use just Google. You can find symbols pretty easily. So we're going to go with Apple here, so AAPL. The second parameter is the finance API that we're going to use. And in our case, we're going to use the Yahoo Finance API, which means that we have to pass the string Yahoo. And the last 2 parameters are actually quite simple. It's just a start date and the end date. So by doing that, we get a data frame downloaded into our script, which has the stock data of Apple from the start date up until the end date. So we can go ahead and print the data frame. Sorry, candlestick chart. And we'll see that we have all the data here structured in a specific way. We have the date column, which is our index column with the individual dates. And we have all kinds of columns here, high, low, in between we have open, close, and then we also have the volume and the adjusted close. If you want to take a look at the columns, you just print data.columns and we will get an array or a list of the columns. So high, low, open, close, volume, and adjusted close. Now for our candlestick function, we only need 4 of those values: high, open, low, and close. And to do that, we just restructure our data in a specific way. So restructure data. And what we do is we define our data frame to be our data frame, but just 4 specific columns, namely open, high, low, and close. It's important that we keep this order here. We need it to be in the order open, high, low, close, because if you swap 2 columns here, for example, open, low, high, close, the chart will look completely different because the function candlestick OHLC takes the data in, or assumes that the data is in this particular order. So it's very important that we put the values or the column names in that order here. Now what we have is a data frame with the date column and only those 4 columns left. So we don't have a volume and we don't have an adjusted close value anymore. But in order to plot our data, we also need the date column in a specific format, because right now the date column, as we saw earlier on, is in the date format. But for our function, we need it to be in the number format, in a numerical format. And to do that, we need to convert it. But since our data column is, or the date column is now the index column, we cannot manipulate it. So the first thing that we need to do is to reset the index. And we're going to pass the parameter inPlace equals true, which just means that we replace the actual or the current data frame by the new one, which has now reset the index. Because otherwise we would need to write data equals data.reset index. But instead of doing that, we just pass this parameter or set this parameter to true. And now we could go ahead and print our data frame or the head. And we will see that our date column is no longer the index. Oh, sorry, this is still being printed here. But you can see that the date column right now is an individual column, which is not the index column, because the index column is just now counting from 0 upwards until the end of the until just the end of the data frame. So what we now can do is manipulate the date column. So the next step is to map a certain function onto our date values. So we say the date column is now the date column, and we're going to use the map function to map a specific function of the dates module from matplotlib. So we write mdates.date to num. So what we do here is we take each entry of the date column and map this function onto it. The date to num function is just converting data from the date format into the numerical format. And by using the map function, we just apply this function to every single entry of our date column. So now we're good to go. We can print it one more time to see how it looks like right now. And you can see that now our date has a numerical format. We cannot see the date format anymore. We just have numbers that our function will be able to work with. Now the next step is just plotting the data. It's not a lot to do anymore. We're just going to plot the data in a very simple way first, and then we're going to take care about the style, or take care of the style. because first of all, we just want to put our candlestick chart out there, and then we can adjust colors and titles and all that stuff. So visualization. So first of all, we need to define an axis here, which is basically just a subplot. Don't ask me why it's called axis. I don't know. It's just a convention, but basically when you define a subplot, you usually give it the name AX. So we just define a new subplot. Why are we doing this? Because the candlestick function takes as a first parameter a subplot. So we need to pass the subplot to our function, otherwise we wouldn't need it, but we're just going to define it right now. And after defining this subplot, the next thing that we need to do is call a function called x-axis underline date, because this function indicates or says that our x-axis will be used for the dates. So our dates, which are now in number format, are going to be again converted into date format for matplotlib, so that we can plot the dates, because we don't want our numbers to be on the x-axis, but we want actual dates so that we know which day we're talking about. But we still need the number format for our candlestick function. So by using this function, we just define that matplotlib visualizes the data with, or labels the data with the actual date format. And finally, we can use the candlestick OHLC function to plot our data. So the first parameter, as I said, is the subplot, and the second one is the data we actually want to plot. So we write data.values. By referring to the values attribute, we just get the columns, and the function uses the first column, the date column, as the x-axis, and the open, high, low, and close values for the candlesticks. We could actually go ahead and just print it or plot it as it is right now. So plt.show, but you'll notice that it looks quite ugly. At least that's how I think it is, because you can see, first of all, we have red and black. They're way too thin, and we have a white background, and basically it looks shitty. So the next step, or the final step, is now to take a little bit care of the design and the style of our plot. So we have a grid and we have a dark background, and we can choose the colors for upward and downward movement. And this is what we're going to do right now. So first of all, let's activate our grid here. So x.grid, and we can set it to true. This will take care of the grid. And the next thing that we're going to do is to put the grid below the candlesticks, because right now, if we would do it like that, our grid would go over our candlestick chart, but we wanted to go behind it. We wanted to put it one level or one layer behind our actual candlesticks. And in order to do this, we just use the function set axis below, and we set it to true. Now we're done with the grid. So what's left is taking care of the colors, and as I said, I prefer black or dark colors, and because I want my candlestick chart to look like this in the end. If you prefer light colors or lighter colors, you can go with whatever you want. You can use the same function and set different values, but I'm going to go with black. So the next function that we're going to use is the set face color function. And we're going to set the face color to black. The face color is basically the background of our plot. So what was white will now be black. But at the same time, we're also going to set the face color of the figure to a pretty dark gray. I'm going to show you what this looks like in a second. We can pass hex code here as well. We don't have to write out the color names because these are predefined colors, but we can also go with hex codes here. So I'm going to go with 121212, which is a pretty dark gray. And when we now plot the chart, we'll see that the first face color, let me see, the first face color is the background of the actual plot here. It's completely black, and what we have here is the figure face color, which is a pretty dark gray. But as you notice right now, we cannot really see anything from the tickers here. We cannot see the price. We cannot see the date, and also the colors in the candlestick itself are not very beautiful. So we're going to set our tickers or the tick parameters to a white color. So ax.tick params is the function we're going to use here, and we define the axis to be the x-axis, and we set the colors to basically we could go with white, and we do the same thing for the y-axis. Now the last thing that we need to do is to set the width of the candlesticks and also the color for the upward movement, because the downward movement is already red, but we want the upward movement to be green. So first let's go with the width of, I like 0.5 to 1, you can choose whatever you want. And the last parameter that we're going to set is the color up, and we're going to set it to G, which means green. And finally it looks like this. Pretty beautiful. Actually, I'm not using the predefined green, I noticed right now, because it's quite dark. I use a hex code here, which is 00FF00, because I like the green to be a bit lighter. So you can go with whatever color you want. You can also go with pink if you want, but I think this looks pretty damn awesome. So you can see green for upward movement, red for downward movement, and this is our candlestick. The last thing that we're missing here is the title, which we're going to set right now, ax.set title, and we're going to say Apple share price color equals white, and we should be done with that. Yeah, as you can see, we can now see that it's the Apple share price. We have a grid that goes behind our candlesticks. We have everything in a nice color, and we can use Matplotlib to zoom into certain time frames. For example, if we're interested from June up until now, we can just zoom into that time frame. We can move our chart however we want. It's a bit laggy in my computer, it's not the newest one. And we can analyze these candlesticks. Just one last optimization that we can take care of is maybe we want to have different different ticker symbols, different companies to plot, so we can put our ticker symbol in a variable, Apple, and then use this variable here and also use it for the title. So we can use a placeholder instead of Apple, and then use the format function to inject the ticker. And we can go with Facebook right now, FB, and it should plot the Facebook share price, and also we can see FBs in the title. So that's it for this video. I hope it was helpful to you. You could get some value out of it. Leave comments down below, ask questions what you want, give the video a like if you liked it, subscribe if you want to see more, and see you in the next video. Bye.